speaking today with Ashlie Johnson, who's an HR consultant and professional near Madison, Wisconsin. She recently did a presentation with National DHI to help DHI organizations understand some of the issues around the COVID-19 pandemic and the implications for employers. Ashlie, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We've got a detailed article with you providing significant detail and information that is going to appear on the website along with this video. Mm-hmm. But we thought we might just touch on a couple of the topics that people need to be aware of.
Sure.
Sure. The first might be taking care of your employees on your dairy farm or at your ag business. Mm-hmm. Just a couple of the issues that folks need to be thinking about in terms of practices with their employees.
Right. So I think that the challenges that farmers face are similar to any of the other essential businesses out there, and that is keeping their employees safe while continuing to work. I think the main thing that farmers can do is to implement as many additional cleanliness operations as they can. So making sure that you're providing time for your employees to have access to hand washing stations. If there are folks that normally enter your business, please do suspend all of the unnecessary visitation. So if there are any folks that are coming in that you can potentially teleconference with, or you can have your meetings with in a different format, even some of the sort of day-to-day veterinary checks, things like that, if those are not necessary or required, try to limit or suspend those as well. Just keeping the contact to a minimum, obviously practicing the social distancing as much as you can for your employees. If that means on a dairy farm having an empty stall in between two employees, things like that, whatever you can do based on the setup that you have, please do try to implement it. The guidance we're getting is even if it can potentially impact productivity, if it's going to keep your employees safe, that you should consider taking those steps.
One of the implications or one of the legislative pieces for the coronavirus relief involves employee paid time off. Tell us about that.
Right. So the FFCRA impacts all businesses 500 or fewer. For those of you who are businesses that were 50 or over in the past, you are already familiar with FMLA Classic, or as we're calling it. This enhanced FMLA applies to every business 500 or fewer. So even you small businesses who may have been exempt in the past are no longer exempt. The sick piece of this legislation talks about 6 different reasons why someone might be absent from work due to this COVID-19 emergency. And that's a quarantine or an isolation order, that they're advised by their health provider to stay home and self-isolate, that they're actually experiencing symptoms, that they're caring for an individual who's under isolation order, they're caring for a minor child whose school is closed, or they're experiencing any other substantially similar conditions. So they're not sure if they have COVID, but they're sick and they should stay home. Those are the 6 reasons. Now, for those 6 reasons, there are varying degrees of paid time off. Paid sick leave pays for 2 weeks, but for the different reasons, the first 3 reasons I mentioned, the sick leave is covered at 100% of the normal income of that employee, but is capped at $511 per day. For the last 3 that I mentioned, caring for someone or they have a similar condition, or they're caring for a child whose school is closed, those individuals would be paid at sick leave at 2/3 of their normal pay, capped at $200 per day. So there are limits to what you have to pay, but these provisions are required. So if you have an employee who goes out for these reasons, you want to make sure that you are recording it and paying them appropriately.
And there is some financial assistance for businesses to help with these payments. Is that the case?
Yep, that's absolutely the case. So the way that this works is that you pay the employee, then you get a dollar for dollar credit for each dollar that you're paying out in wages under the FFCRA. Then you're getting that dollar for dollar back on a credit on your FICA payroll tax. So the amounts are credited against what you normally would pay in for your FICA. That your FICA bill is reduced by the amount that you're putting out for that employee payment. You need to work with your payroll provider or your accountant, whoever is sort of managing your payroll processing, to make sure that you are appropriately recording those hours and that you're paying them out at the appropriate level based on the reason that the employee is out.
Another opportunity under the new legislation also concerns getting help with meeting payroll for your employees who continue to work. Since dairy farming is an essential activity, we're expecting that most folks will continue to need their full employee roster to carry on, but there is some financial help available. Just hit the highlights of that one.
Sure. So the support for employers is called the CARES Act, Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. What this says is that they're allowing for different types of loans, a couple of different types of loans that employers can apply for through their bank. So if you are working with a bank currently for any of your other business needs, reach out to that bank and they can walk you through the different options. The main one that most people are talking about right now is the PPP loan. That's the payroll protection provision. And what that talks about is it can cover up to 2 months of a business's average monthly payroll costs. And it defines what those payroll costs are allowed to be and are not allowed to be. So you have to make sure that you're understanding that. And what happens is you get this loan and it could potentially be forgivable if you can provide the appropriate documentation. That's the key point to this. In any of these forgivable loans that are being put out there, you need to make sure that you're getting the right documentation and that you're following the provisions of that loan so that you can have that loan forgiven. Because if you don't, you might not be able to. So it's important to make sure that you're working with your banker closely.
And to that point, the total funding is kind of on a first come, first served basis. So I think you've suggested that people should immediately make contact with their banker to at least explore these possibilities.
Absolutely. So the initial application to get the ball rolling for this is, my understanding, only a 2-page document. So get your hands on that from your banker right away, start filling it out, get that in. Once that's submitted, they do come back and ask you for a fair bit of information. So you'll want to work with your accountant because you're going to have to provide records of previous year payroll. You're going to have to provide other financial data so that they can approve that loan. So make sure that you are getting in contact with your accountant, making sure that you're working with them closely to get all of that information provided as soon as possible. From the clients that I have worked with that have already received approval, it sounds like the approval process is only taking a few days. However, we're in the beginning stages of this, and as more and more businesses realize that they're going to need access to these loans, I anticipate that the volume will increase substantially.
Sure. Well, Ashlie, we thank you very much for taking a few minutes. We don't mean to cut you short here, but there's a lot of detail.
There is.
The article that you provided for us that is appearing right now on the website is where folks can go. And you'll also have, we'll have in that article some additional websites that folks can get the full details, the full scoop.
Yes, absolutely. We'll include a lot of detail in that article, and as well as some links to government resources where folks can find additional detail.
Sure. Well, thank you. Again, we've been speaking with Ashlie Johnson, who's the owner of Brooke's Human Resource Solutions in Madison, Wisconsin. We thank you very much for taking time to be with us.
Thank you.
And I'm Joel Hastings for dairybusiness.com.